Hello, and welcome to Bookish Haze, a podcast where we get to talk about two of our favorite things, Taylor Swift and reading. I'm Katie.
And I'm Sameen, and every episode we're going to take a book or series and analyze the characters as they relate to songs across Taylor Swift's entire discography.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bookish Haze. This week, we are so excited to finally be tackling Onyx Storm, which we know we are a bit delayed with this, but that's okay. Give it time to marinate and see what people said. And I guess we'll just dive right in. Not too much to talk about beforehand, but Sameen, I know you just finished it. What did you think?
Honestly, I gave this book a 3 out of 5.
Same.
It was rough. I did not want to start reading it. I did not want to continue reading it. I hardly ended up able to finish it.
Ooh.
So,
Okay.
what about you?
That's fair. I think it was better than I expected, but it wasn't
Okay.
like, wow, this is the greatest book ever. Like, I think it was basically exactly what we expected, which was like, this is the third book. It's a little bit of a filler. Things need to just happen. You don't get really any answers. So I also gave it a 3 out of 5. Like I said, like, I feel like there was so much action in this book that reading it did feel like, okay, stuff is happening, things are going on. It wasn't just like 400 or whatever pages of boring. But yeah, I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. It was fine.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think you're right about the action in this one. I don't think Rebecca Yarros's pacing got better on this book than it's been on previous ones. I think it may have actually gotten a little bit worse. But I do think that in this case, the passage of time was a little bit better. And it was just like, okay, at least we're skipping like several weeks or several months. And so it wasn't like everything is happening back to back, which made it feel a little bit more feasible. But she was very much guilty of that, like when you get to the last 100 pages and everything is happening all at once, and all of a sudden you're like a little bit anxious about what's going to happen next. And then it's like, oh no, there isn't enough space left in the book to actually tell you what's going to actually happen. Um, and all of that to say, I don't think that the series needed 5 books. I feel
Hmm.
like we could have gone ahead with 3 books. Um,
Yeah.
what did you think of all of the characters that were introduced, or all the character names that popped up?
Yeah. I mean, as always, I feel like it was hard to keep track of. I will say, I
Hmm.
think, like, given how many characters there were a lot more opportunities to, like, deepen my remembrance, I guess, of some of the characters that were previously introduced, like Kat, and some of them, like, the Griffin Riders.
Hmm.
But then, yeah, she kept adding more, and of course, people died. And so I kind of just was like, this general group in my head instead of really knowing and understanding the backstories of some of these characters.
Yeah, that's fair. I will say by the time Traeger died, I had just figured out who he was.
Yeah.
And then I know that they had just explained, I think it was like literally 3 pages earlier. They were like, yeah, when a wyvern dies, like so does the rider, and then when a rider dies, like so does their wyvern. And like that's how that interconnection bond works. But still when they were like, it's Traeger, and then like Traeger's wyvern
Hmm.
on the floor, and I was like, what? I can't even remember the name of it. I think it was like Silas. And
Yeah,
I
something
was
like that.
like, who is this? Like, is this another person? I thought the arrow just went through one heart. I'm so confused. Also, speaking of like gratuitous deaths, I suppose, um, she caught it pretty close on this one. I feel like there were a few that like were like, oh wow, we're really gonna kill off this character. Must this happen?
Yeah. Also, good call on the wyverns. I totally blanked on their names, and I was like, this is basically what they sound like or are like in my head. Um, but yeah, I think obviously it was supposed to be like a, oh no, this like major character or like character you love is gonna die. But like, just
Yeah.
kidding, which is great, exciting. I'm glad, no one died. Since we already had like who was it, Sawyer, who's working his way through his last experience. But I kind of just like, the book felt like it followed a specific format that was like, okay, here is this information, something's happening. fight, fight, fight. Maybe we need to go out searching, and the higher ups don't want us to go this way, so we're gonna like disobey orders, and then we get in trouble, and then we're fighting again, and then maybe there's like a near death, and then we were disobeying orders again. So I felt like the whole book was like the same thing over and over in each act. Like I guess the same plot, like broken up into several chunks.
Yeah.
So like I guess at some point one major, or not major, but like one character had to die. So
Yeah.
TLDR, the answer to your question is like, yeah. Uh I'm glad that no one major died, but also it was kind of sad because I was like, poor cat.
Yeah, she was just finally getting over it and she was finally going into something wonderful and then she lost it immediately. Um, Rip our minor characters. I will say on this one, I did enjoy the riddle that they put forward a little bit better
Hmm.
this time around. It reminded me of the ACOTAR riddle and how quickly everyone kind of came to that answer. And I feel like it was just like a very even split of like readers who got the answer really quickly and readers who didn't. And for this one, it like really took a second. And I feel like I haven't seen anyone having caught the answer all that quick. So I will give points for the cleverness on that one and just like I mean, I feel like part of it is just like what we talked about, where we almost need like an index of like who all these riders
Hmm.
are and what their respective creatures are. And also like the status of their humanity would be really helpful. Um, but other than that, I think that riddle was really well put together.
Yeah, I agree. I liked how it unraveled too. Like it wasn't, it was obvious, but only to Violet. Like she
Yeah,
was the one who it needed to be. Also, I kind of liked the sibling conflict, kind of that like came
yeah.
up in the sense of like this was Violet's task, and Mira was a little bit like miffed about that, but it kind of was. I don't know. It kind of I think shed some light on like their experiences and their childhood, and like how their parents viewed them or tried to like prepare them for the future.
Yeah, it was really interesting to see like Mira's point of view from Violet's point of view and like see her react that way because I feel like we just haven't like I think the way that Violet views her sister is very much like she is my big sister, like she knows everything. She's very big and strong and capable. And Mira's like, why is my little sister being put on with everything? Like, why didn't anyone
Hmm.
believe in me? Um, and I really like, yeah, I think she presented it really well. And I think that it was very real. There was that one scene where Violet like was like catatonic for 3 days because of Endarna. And then
Hmm.
it was like both Brennan and Mira were there and they got straight into like full blown sibling bickering.
Yeah.
And I was like, honestly, this is wonderful. This is so relatable and well written just because it was like, what sibling relationship have you ever had where you don't bicker at like, regardless of whether it's like the appropriate time to bicker or like, I'm like, oh, I should really like be getting along with my brothers now. And it's like, yeah, maybe, but also this is the perfect time to pick a fight.
Yeah. Also, it's like they obviously still have so much unresolved tension around what happened in, I guess, the second book, in the sense that like Brennan is alive, surprise.
Yeah.
And so I know we got a few fights, but we never really got the resolution, and so this is kind of just an extension of that.
Yeah, somebody get them a subscription to Better Health because they need therapy.
True. But speaking of family and Adarna, what did we think of finding her, I guess, like species? That's not the right word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think it was anticlimactic at best. And I
Honestly,
was
fair, yeah.
really disappointed. It just kind of felt like this book was like, here's an obstacle, now fall over it. Here's another obstacle, now fall over it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, like, honestly, if it didn't have as big of a following from whatever they were doing to market this in the first place, I don't think people would have actually necessarily finished this book because I don't think that it was written to be finished in that sense. Like there isn't that sense of like, I don't know, I feel like whenever we read books that are similar to this, it's like there you get some kind of win
Mm-hmm.
um a little bit more often. Like you kind of get picked up a few more times off the ground before like getting to like the strong conclusion, but there's like battles that you win along the way and I feel like in this case every single battle was just consistently loss after loss after loss.
Yeah.
And then it was like the only thing that potentially won was the concept of like Xaden and Violet's relationship, which honestly is just like, it's getting annoying. I'm like, I don't want to read this. This is like irritating to keep having the same conversation over and over again. And like, you're not moving forward, you're not moving backwards, you're just at like a standstill of like, this is how it's going to be.
Yeah, I think things that I thought were interesting from this book is kind of the exploration of, okay, Venin also have their sigils, signets.
Yeah.
Okay.
Signets.
Yes, I was like, I am mixing up all my words today, but yes, they're signets. And how a lot of times the Venin signets appear in response to the riders or like vice versa. So I thought that was interesting, and I think it's pretty cool, like that we met Violet's mom's like twin mirror. That's a better word.
Yeah. The
Um,
mirror.
yeah, but I agree. I think like you said, their relationship didn't really progress. The finding Adarna's family was a lot of just this big buildup for it to be actually nothing and them to be like pricks. And kind of like didn't feel like it left as much of a doorway for them to even come back at all. Like maybe they will, and like obviously the Darna's relation related great dragon like showed up and fired the word stone.
Hmm.
But other than that, it kind of like seemed like a done and dusted plotline. So considering it felt like that was supposed to be the winning part of the book, and also like you kind of want that for Darna, just given the type of character she's written as, it is lending to your point that this should have just been like 3 books, maybe 4, but like
Yeah.
shrink this whole book into one section of a 3rd book.
Yeah. I think we could have gone with just having most of what happened in the second half happen. Um, it was also just like, I have a note here that like towards the end of the book, when you get between like the second to last chapter and that last chapter, I literally looked at it and I was like, to be fair, I was reading this at approximately 2:30 a.m. So like take this with a grain of salt. But I read it as like, what? My note is literally, what the fuck? Did we get a misprint? Like, how did we just jump from that to the ring on her finger?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like it
I
was
forgot about
similar
that.
to like, there's just like a lot of, I feel like at the end of this book and at the end of Iron Flame, there were just like mic drop moments where it was like, drop the mic and walk away. And it's like, wait, no, this is not the time to walk away. You need to like explain why you felt that you could drop the mic and walk away with that level of pizzazz.
Mhm.
Please.
Yeah, also
I need more.
no, also, like, forgot because so many, like, random things happened, that Xaden just got his title back, essentially, and that to me, like, felt like such a plot point. Not a plot point,
Yeah,
like, plot convenience, because it was like, okay, well, we also have Halden, which was actually kind of funny as a character, just in the
it's
sense of, like, yeah,
hilarious.
like, seeing their interactions when they first see each other again. Um, and okay, also his brother is here. They discover that, but now we have the princely thing. But now Zayden's gonna throw away this newfound power he has to be like involved and also just like make people acquiesce to his commands. And like that's great, but it was like, was that the only reason this was like given back? Because you wanted the convenience of being like, okay, he's like king of Tyrandor, so do what he
He can
says.
show up
Yeah,
and he can be there for the king that needs to only meet aristocrats.
yeah.
Um, which wild dinner situation.
Yeah. Honestly, I was kind of entertained, and then it kind of went off
Yeah.
the rails.
Yeah, I feel like that was the theme of this book. It was like, okay, we're getting somewhere. I'm really enjoying this. Like, I think I messaged you when we hit the riddle, and I was like, oh my God, her
Mhm.
first love. And then I was like, oh my God, her first ex was Halden, and Halden is 6 letters. This is so
Yeah.
fascinating. And it like
Yeah.
really was. And then it just kind of was like, and now you're in a
And
dick measuring contest.
yes. I will say,
And
oh,
now we don't
sorry.
need to do this. Oh, sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I did think it was hilarious when the bookkeeper thought that Zayden was Dane.
Oh, that was
That was
so
so
good.
funny.
I also really I liked that bookshop scene a lot. I liked how much like insight we got into Violet's dad. And
Mhm.
also, I think there was one person that she met that like recognized her dad and then called him by a different last name than Sorengale. And so I didn't realize that they had taken her mother's last name when
Yeah,
they got
that's a
married,
good
which I thought
point.
was really interesting.
That is interesting. Oh yeah, so the other thing that they revealed was the whole Violet had been blessed, or what? How did they word it?
Like
Yeah,
sacrificed,
like
pledged.
yeah, pledged. Yeah, I think that was what they used. And that's like why her hair is silver and also similar to all the other people that she saw that also had silver hair. Which I feel like she did not freak out as much about that. She was kind of like, "Wait, did you see that?" And then they like moved on. But I thought that was kind of cool lore, and I hope it gets explored more because I think it was like an interesting thread to pull.
Yeah, I think it was really fascinating how they did that. And I agree. I wish that she had kind of like, when it had happened, she had gotten the answers that she wanted right then instead of like figuring it out. Like, this was that thing again, right? Like, all of these questions got answered. Like, we spent 450 pages almost building up to all of these questions, and then they all got answered within the last like 90 to 100 pages. And
Yeah.
I know this because I was about to go to sleep and I was like, no, all of my questions are about to be answered. I am a huge fan of Rydok's prank war that he is in with his dragon,
Oh my
though.
god,
I think that
so
that scene was
funny.
so funny.
Yeah, I feel like Rydok as a side character was like top tier this book.
Hmm.
I
100%.
Yeah, and then Tarn was like great as always.
We do love to see it. For his, I was actually thinking about it because we were like focused so much on this like seventh breed concept. But he mentioned like specifically in one of these, he was like Terran and Sigil are two different breeds. And it just kind of made me sit there and wonder, I was like, have we gotten an answer on like if Terran and Sigil are mates, like why aren't there more mixed breed dragons? Because typically the concept of mates exists in order to like continue a species.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like,
Yeah, that's a good
but
question. I wonder if it's
yeah,
just like hand
plot
wavy
twist.
the like recessive and dominant genes, like it all goes to one dragon, or I guess like the dominant genes take over and it's just one breed.
Yeah, plot holes
Um,
and things of that nature.
yeah, that reminded me of something. Well, for one thing, back to the whole Venom sigils, signets, not sigils. The new Shadow Wielder that like popped up because like in response to Zayden, I was like, that kind of sucks. He's not special anymore.
No, we really tried.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that. I'm sure it's going to be more relevant because people are going to be like, why is there two Shadow Wielders? But I was just like, wow, they really gave it to someone else.
Yeah, I think it was really interesting. And I think that it also begs the question, like if we're talking about mirrors and T, whatever Theopine is is not Violet's mirror, if it's her mother's mirror,
Hmm.
then who is Violet's mirror? Like we still haven't met that person yet.
Yeah.
And also like then there's the question of like how do the mirrors even work, right? And I would
Hmm.
assume that Violet has a mirror just because she is strong enough to have one.
Yeah.
And it seems like even if they were sticking with like, okay, we're only gonna take like the strongest signets, then like, yeah, hers would have to be on the table, I would think.
Yeah. The question is though, Theopian was like really like the stronger version of Violet's mom. I think is what they implied. So is Violet the stronger version of her signet, or is there someone else who is more powerful than her? I wonder.
Yeah. And then my other question would be like, okay, but is this one of those situations where we're saying that Violet's mom was the less strong one because her like beliefs and ways of moving forward was very much clouded by emotion, the way that humans are? They were saying that that's like the one thing that really set aside like the venom from humans is like that ability to like feel things. And so it's that
Yeah.
concept of like, okay, is it actually just being stronger or is it just being ruthless and like not having really anything or anyone to fight for, just like
Mm-hmm.
power?
No, that's a great point. And it also makes me feel like it's kind of setting up for the fact of like, no, love will conquer all because we feel this
Yeah.
emotion. Like, we're actually stronger. So, like, the power of friendship. So, we'll see.
Yeah, we're about to get like a real plot hole in the magic system to get Xaden back from being Venom. Like I can feel this.
Yeah. Yeah. I will be curious to know, is it like he is actually cured or they like figure out like how to control it? Yeah. Like, I'm interested to see how she wants to resolve it.
And make it a happily ever after. Yeah.
Okay, two things that I wanted to mention. One, Rebecca Yarros has said she's a Dane apologist. I think she proved it in this book. How do we feel
Yes.
about Dane?
I think I understand why she's a Dane apologist. I think it's really funny that she laid down this like these just like couple of little lines of Sloane and Dane getting together and
Mm-hmm.
having interest, and I think that that is hilarious. Um, I also feel like that's just one of those moments though where like there were a few moments in this book where I was like, oh yeah, I can see that she started out as a romance author. Um, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that Dane is very much redeeming himself. And I also very much appreciate the concept of like how they figured out like when he can break the rules and when he won't, and kind of like opted to play it to their advantage. And just like, I think we have seen a good amount of character growth
Mm-hmm. I
that makes us
agree.
all hate him a little bit less.
Yeah. I feel like I never really hated him. Like, he was a goody two shoes, and so you're kind of
Yeah.
like annoyed with him, but ultimately I think he like tried to stand by what he believed in, and then once it was revealed that what he was learning and what he thought was like kind of a lie or just like different than what people said or like the higher up said, I
Mhm.
think like you said, we started to see that character growth and that like thinking more for himself, which is awesome. And then of course you add in his dad being like an asshole this whole book, and so you have like the
It's the worst.
I know, so annoying. Like, I honestly expected him to do a lot worse, like the way he like was able to wield a lot of the power he had to already be a nuisance. But yeah, anyways, I was saying the shared villain for Dane and Violet.
Yeah, I think that helps a lot.
Yeah.
I really liked that one comment where Xaden had just asked a question about them riding horses, and they were like, "I can't believe you're acknowledging the fact that we used to be like literally best friends."
Yeah.
He was
Like,
like,
good for
"Oh,
him.
character growth all around."
Truly, like, good for him for biting back. I feel like we're
Yeah,
showing it was like a good way to show like, okay, maybe they're getting a little bit back to normal and like they can go back to being friends again.
yeah.
Okay, and then the second thing I wanted to talk about was dream walking second signet.
Well, yeah.
Well,
Dreamwalking Second Signet is a great one, and also Dreamwalking Second Signet when unbonded to said second dragon. How do you feel about it?
I think it's on par with a lot of people's theories. I don't know if anyone specifically that I read said like dream walking, but I know there was a lot of like the is what is it called in
Anistic?
Anistic, that I was like, I know the letters go in a certain way. Anistic
Yeah.
like signets. So yeah, I think I'm not that surprised. I think the way it manifested was kind of cool in the sense that like we as the readers were reading these dreams and it was kind of weird. Like I was very confused why the whole like, oh, you're the queen of Terrandor to Cat. I was like, that's so odd. Uh, but it was like a good way to reveal how her signet was manifesting. But yeah, the whole like unbonded thing is kind of interesting. I don't know if I really have any thoughts around it, just in the sense that like the dragons that left her there kind of were like, I think kind of made it seem like they have a lot of abilities or a lot of like things that you don't know about them. So I'm
Hmm.
like, maybe this is just one of them.
Yeah, and I almost wonder if it was one of those things where, like, well, so for one thing, the bond stayed open between Violet, Taryn, and Darna the entire time, even when they were off of Magical Land. And like Violet's
Mm.
orb still stayed powered. So part of me is wondering if, like, maybe,
Ah.
yeah, it has to do with Andarna, but I'm also wondering if it maybe just has to do with like Violet and the way that magic exists within her. Basically, all of that to say, it's a really interesting kind of thing that happened, and I think it was interesting how it like carried on. So I'm almost wondering if like either it's that it's something within Violet that lets her be bonded to Andarna, or the way that they said it before, right? How like Andarna chose Violet, and so like
Hmm.
that's why that was there. And like, can another dragon like really truly break that bond? Or was it also maybe just that they were bonded together for such a long time, and from the point that Andarna was a hatchling to the point where it was like, yeah, some of that magic just became a part of Violet. So not necessarily that she was born with it, but like when you take into consideration the fact that like this person was someone who is like, what did we say it was? Not blessed,
Pledged.
but pledged to a goddess, and then on top of that, like is someone who's like usually chronically ill and like has that whole thing listed, and then on top of that is like one of the strongest people, and on top of all of that is bonded to two dragons. It's like, yeah, this is like a lot of coincidences.
Hmm.
um, and I feel like that needs to be resolved.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Also, back to her like being chronically ill, I kind of feel like it's less relevant now. Like, obviously, we see it in a few like parts where it's like, oh, you have to learn how to do this. What did they do? Like, drop off your
The
dragon, then get back on.
maneuvers.
Yeah, the maneuvers. Um, I feel like it was a lot more prominent in like the first book, and now it's constantly just like, well, I've had worse pain, or like I'm able to manage the pain. Like, obviously, she mentions it, but it feels just like a just to remember that this was some character trait I gave her already.
Yeah. um I will say on that note, just in terms of like how she's been developing with pain and things like that, it kind of like, I have no idea how passage of time is necessarily happening. Like in the first book, I feel like it was just like a lot, like it happened over the course of maybe a few weeks. It seemed like it happened really fast. Um, and honestly, for this one, I felt like because they had this whole rebellion and then came back, I was like, wait, but now that you guys have rebelled and like come back, maybe we don't need to have this like extremely strict listening so much to like the like council and like Atos and all of the other, just there was a lot of restriction around what they can do that I really wasn't expecting that to keep.
Hmm. That's interesting. Like, I guess I get that, but I guess on the opposite side, maybe it's just like because it's so chaotic, having the structure around everything like helps, like maybe not, like the third, fourth years, but like the first, second years, like be less terrified, or like feel more normalized, or like people have a plan as opposed to just like, well, the world's going to shit, like just do
Yeah.
whatever. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I think
I
I'm
hear that
thinking
too.
more of like, yeah, and I think I'm thinking more of like less of that. Like I fully agree. I think the college itself needs to continue to have like some sense of normalcy for those first and second years, but I think it's more of just like when she's like, this is what I want to do, and they're like, no, you're gonna do exactly what we tell you. And then
Um,
they're like, oh, I can't believe that you went off the fucking rails. And it's
mhm.
like, no, because she led a rebellion. Like,
Yeah. Well,
guys.
I think that's just like old people pride, in the sense of like, we've been through a war before, like we know what we're talking about. You know nothing, even though you're like uber powerful and like tethered to the other uber powerful shadow wielder and should be garnering more respect. I think it's a point where they actually have less respect for her because of it. But
That's
it
a
also
real
gives
okay
us,
boomer moment.
no, no, literally. But I guess it also gives us those good points of like seeing how Violet will show up for herself, and also which was really prominent in this book was this like Violet is the leader. She doesn't necessarily want to be, but
Yes.
like that is how everyone's viewing her. That's just like how it is coming out.
Yeah, it's that thing about like having greatness thrust upon you, I think it is. I do think for the next book, one, I think that the next book is going to be another filler book again,
Unfortunate.
which is just like I wish we wouldn't.
She's got to
But I
sell
also,
the books.
yeah, I guess so. I also was just like, I do fear that we're gonna find out about the recovered missives and like what they're from more towards the end of the fourth book, and I feel like that's gonna be the like cliffhanger moment.
Wait, what do you
Um,
mean by recovered missives?
so you know, at the beginning of every chapter, there's like a quote at the top that's like from something that's been written. It can be
Oh,
someone's
I
like
see.
journal. Yeah, so there's been a lot of like recovered missive that's been like
Mm-hmm.
translated. And I'm like, And I feel like I've seen a lot of speculation as to like why it's going to be. And part of me is like, man, I hope it's like that they get a happily ever after and that this is just being told like fucking 50 years later. But I feel like the reality of the situation is we're going to find out what those recovered missives are from. And that's going to be like either the cliffhanger or like some like driving plot point in the fourth book that happens like way too close to the
Hmm.
end.
Interesting. Yeah, I kind of had started or have always read them as like the whole this is the history books 50 years later, but I haven't like seen theories that it's actually just, like some third party or some other being that is kind of like receiving these and that's what we're getting snippets of. So,
Yeah, like, yeah, there were a couple that was like, because this has been all, because the beginning of all these books, I think, I'm going to check for this one. Oh, okay. For anyone listening, there is an entire directory literally at the beginning of the book that tells you every person and then their signet and who they're bonded to.
yeah.
Slay. That's really helpful. The following text has been faithfully transcribed from Navarian into the modern language by Jesinia Nailwort, curator of the Scribe Quadrant at Bagseath War College. All events are true, and names have been preserved to honor the courage of those fallen. May their souls be commended to Malik. And that's still like at the beginning of every single one of them. And then, like, even for the first chapter, it's like recovered correspondence of General Augustine Melgren to His Majesty King Tori.
Hmm.
Um, and then there's several that's like recovered from Cadet Violet Sorrengail
Hmm.
to Duke of Tyrrendor. And so I'm just really curious, like, who recovered them?
Hmm.
Why were they recovered? Where were they
Yeah.
recovered from? But I also don't necessarily think that it means that they're dead. I think that it could just be that like you can recover things that are lost.
Yeah, that's true. Also, this reminded me because of like Melgren, but Ari, like a very powerful signet that I feel like
Yeah.
they dropped on us on that one time for like that critical moment and then never again. Or I mean, I guess it was near the end of the book, but you know what I mean. Like,
Yeah. It was just like, oh, we figured out his signet. It's manifested.
so I guess we'll see what happens with that. But that's like, I don't know. It gives her a lot of opportunities, I guess, for book 4/book 5, like what she wants to do with it.
Yeah. What predictions do you have?
I don't know. I'm like, okay, so they banished or killed or disintegrated
I did
Theope.
something.
Yeah. What is
Yeah.
her name? The
Theopine?
Theope. Yeah, Theope. Okay. I think the one that is in Zayden's dreams, that Bart dude. I'm like,
Irwin?
was that yeah, Berwin. I literally just remember like the beginning of these people's names and then they become blah, blah, blah in my head. But I think he's gonna come back like physically in some way because clearly he is still haunting Zayden's dreams, no matter how many times he thinks he killed him. Um, and then I think they're gonna figure out something with the venom. I don't know if that's like a antidote or just like I said, like maybe they just learn how to control it better. And I think it's going to be like we have found this out, but like for some reason can't cure Zayden at this moment, and then that's like what happens in the fifth book.
I think those make sense. I feel like I agree with a lot of them. I feel like book four is, like I said, going to be kind of a filler. We're gonna find more about the Venom and just like the hierarchy of them.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm hoping we also get like a little bit more of like their motivation. Like I get that we're saying that they're just power hungry, but like this seems a little bit excessive for just power hunger.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like we're going to get closer and closer to a point where like all of the allies that they kind of like tried to build on this one, maybe they're going to realize somewhere around book five that like they need to like actually show up.
Oh yeah, good call. Avengers Assemble a
Hmm.
moment.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting that like the comment at the end about Zayden's like bringing Zayden's brother, but then also the fact like initially when that comment was made, I was thinking like, oh, he has two brothers. Oh, he called Liam his brother. Oh, he called Bodhi his brother. So it's just like there's a lot of different options for like what we're talking about when we say that.
Hmm.
So I'm hoping for some like clarification there. And then like yeah, I think there's a lot of like they're set up in this one for just Zayden fully giving up on like the concept of ever coming back. And so I feel like it's going to be more of just like that fight of like, no, I'll get you back. And he's like, no, there's no way to bring me back. And I feel like it's just going to be another like back and forth of that for the fourth book. And then it's going to be something similar to how like she set it up in Iron Flame with the Iron Flame and figuring out it kind of like the last second and just being
Hmm.
like, oh, we need to like I feel like they're gonna get halfway there and then they can solve it the other half like in the fifth book a little bit better. The way that like the seventh breed of dragon just kind of showed up and casually fired the word stone
Yeah,
and was like
then
ward
dipped.
stone, sorry, not word stone. That's a different series. But like yeah, and just was like exactly, he like fired it up and then dipped and then was like it's not a problem anymore, but it was such a big problem before. Like, I feel like it's just going to be something that's like, oh, it's like a really easy solve that was like right in front of us. And then we're going to be
Hmm.
like, ah, shucks at the end of it.
Yeah, I could see that. I like all of those. Um, Spicy take. Do we think? I guess it's not really a spicy take, but like, do you think any main characters are gonna die?
Yeah,
Me too. Who?
we got too much from Rhiannon and Imogen at the end. And I'm very stressed about that.
Honestly, yeah, that's an excellent point. I feel like low key Brennan might die like officially.
For real?
Yeah. I just feel like one of the siblings has to die. I guess their mom
Well,
died, so
Mira
maybe they're
almost
safe.
did.
Yeah, that's true. But like I didn't really feel it as much.
Yeah, I kind of read that and I was like, there's no fucking way.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I agree. I think it just kind of depends as to like how much quote unquote hope we're supposed to lose.
Yeah.
Because I feel like she's been doing a lot of like for the past book and a half or so, I feel like it's just been like lost hope, lost hope,
Mhm.
lost hope. And it's just like, and I think that's part of the reason like this has not been a positive review today. And I don't think it will continue to be. Like, I don't think it's gonna get any better until we get like some level of like, I just want good things in the world for this. I feel like we're kind of on like the fourth season of a show where it just kind of goes off the rails.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, I mean that is kind of what it is. It's just like it's not that we thought it's terrible. It just feels like unnecessary. And so that's kind of an annoying in that regard, where it's just like, I'm not getting anything new from reading these 400 pages. So why couldn't you have just made this like one book or
Yeah.
combined it into like one book?
And unfortunately, 529 pages of really small text on a thin piece of paper does not spark joy.
Yeah, valid. So that's what we got for you all. Anything to add to me?
No, I really wish this was a lot better. Um, Red Tower Books, please print us something good next time.
Yeah, I will say, like, I was not intentionally trying to avoid spoilers, and I'm also not really like my algorithm isn't sending me book stuff anymore. But I really didn't see anyone talking about Onyx Storm aside from the first few days that
Yeah.
it came out. So I feel like maybe everyone's kind of feeling the same vibes.
No, I think that's a really good point. I was kind of sitting there and I feel like when Iron Flame came out, and even when Fourth Wing itself just came out, like I was working hard to like just get rid of all these spoilers, not to watch these things, and it was like spoilers ahead, spoilers ahead. And I'm like, this time around, I didn't even have to put in like I I had zero effort in this. It just there was no spoilers. Nobody wanted to have this conversation. We kept putting off having this conversation.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, here's to a better book next time.
Yup. Anyways, thank you all for joining us for this podcast on Onyx Storm. We hope you all enjoyed. Let us know what you thought. Prove us wrong. Let us know why you loved this book. And we will be back in 2 weeks with our blind date number 3. So super excited for that. And be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Bookish Haze Pod. And yeah, we'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.